Hello, everyone. This is Independent Conservative. Thank you all for joining me. So, President Donald Trump is in the process of signing an executive order. He hasn't done it yet, but he's in the process of signing an executive order that would dismantle the so-called Board of Education. And of course, for lack of a better word, this is causing a lot of people to go into a hizzy. They're starting to have conniptive fits. They're starting to have strokes and heart attacks. They're basically jumping off of bridges, and the mainstream media is helping them do this. You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of controversy around this because people, essentially because of the mainstream media, liberal media is causing them to think this way, think that Trump is just sitting up here arbitrarily signing a bunch of executive orders without thinking about the consequences of those executive orders. However, let's get into this article that I'm about to read to you guys that points out to some degree what Trump said essentially on X, formerly known as Twitter. What he essentially said on X, formerly known as Twitter, is that, a lot of our money is being spent on these schools, and yet our children are at the bottom of the heap, if you will, in terms of education, in terms of learning, in terms of progressing. They're below everyone else. So let's get right into this article, because I definitely have something to say about why I believe, in part, a lot of our young people in our country today, in spite of all the money that the federal government spends on these schools and on our students, are beneath lackluster when it comes to academics. Let's get right into this. Yeah. So this is not a shock to me. And I think people need to understand it fully before they start making the judgment call that Trump is just arbitrarily signing a bunch of executive orders without thinking about the consequences. That's nonsense, okay? President Donald Trump is preparing to sign an executive order. Now, notice it says preparing to sign, okay, an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. Two sources familiar with the plan told NBC News. The report appears to confirm a report from the Wall Street Journal on Monday that indicated the Trump administration officials were weighing executive actions to dismantle. So notice that the phrase, they're weighing executive actions. It hasn't been done yet, but they're contemplating it. Weighing executive actions to dismantle the department. Now, here's the part that stood out to me. A move that would likely place the education of children in the hands of the states. So clearly it's in the hands of the federal government. And where has that gotten us? No freaking where. Anyway, let's go on. Even if such a thing was to happen, it would more than likely put the education into the hands of the states. Isn't that how it's supposed to be to begin with? Anyway, Trump campaigned in 2024 on dismantling the agency, drawing the ire of Democrats, of course, or what you would call Democrats, because a lot of these Democrats today, in my opinion, are not Democrats. I've said that before. They are not your down-home, old-fashioned Democrats. These guys are communists and socialists who are trying to create a socialist government. But I'm gonna get into that. Quote: in total, American society pours more than $1 trillion, $1 trillion with a T, dollars, $1 trillion. That's incredible. $1 trillion a year into public education systems, but instead of being at the top of the list, we are literally right smack, guess what, at the bottom, Trump previously said. Now, think about that. If this number is accurate, okay, if it's $1 trillion a year in public education systems, that's not 300 billion, 400 billion, 500 billion, 600 billion, 700 billion, 800 billion, 900 billion. That's $1 freaking trillion a year into public education systems. Now, my question is, if all this money is being poured into the systems, and you hear people, you hear all these groups yipping and yapping and don't know what's happening about, oh, what is he doing? Woo. Well, if all this money is going to these schools, why are we still at the bottom of the list? And what Trump was referring to when he said that we are not at the top of the list, we're literally right smack at the bottom, he was referring, I believe, to academic processes. In terms of how our American children compete with other countries such as China, India, and others, we fail miserably, especially in the areas of science and math. which are the hard sciences, for lack of a better word. They have a lot. They do those type of sciences, if you will, or those type of academic processes deals a lot with intellectual processes. It deals a lot with using your brain to analyze facts and data and come up with logical solutions. We fail. The American children overall fails horribly. You may have a little bit, a few here or there, but for the most part, the American children fails horribly in comparison to those from China, India, and other countries that come in and compete with us. So what's the problem? We're spending all this money and yet nothing's happening. We're still at the bottom of the heap. Now, I thought that the school's purpose was to educate our children, right? Let's go on. I'm gonna get into that. I'm going ahead of myself here. But I agree with what Trump is saying here. I agree with him. The article goes on to say, it is unclear how the executive order might work, but it appears only Congress has the authority to totally abolish the department. So, of course, at this point, we know that we won all of it. We won the House of Representatives. We won the Senate. So we have control of control of the Supreme Court, if you will, at least to some extent. So we overall we have control. It's red basically. So if in fact Congress is able to vote this in, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's hard for me to understand why is it so difficult to vote for the academic success of children. I don't know. It shouldn't take a vote. It should be common sense. I mean, you need to teach your children. But anyway, yeah, according to this particular paragraph in this article, it appears only Congress has the authority to totally abolish the department. So in order for that to be the case, Congress would have to vote on it. But anyway, the article goes on to say Representative Thomas Macy authored a bill last month to terminate the power of, quote, unelected bureaucrats in Washington to be, quote, in charge of our children's intellectual and moral development. Now, this individual authored a bill, created a bill basically last month. Now, whether or not the bill went anywhere, who knows, okay? Designed to terminate the power of, quote, unelected bureaucrats in Washington. People that we never voted for are in Washington right now making decisions for our children. And what are those decisions? We're going to go on. I'm going to get into this. Okay, this type of stuff just angers me when I hear from the mainstream media their protection of these clowns in Congress, in the government. But anyway, let's go on. States and local communities are best positioned to shape curriculum that meets the needs of their students, he added. I agree. The states and the local communities are best positioned to shape curriculum that meets the needs of their students. I agree, because these students are in their states and they've noticed the records of these students more than anyone else. So therefore, they should be better positioned to provide the curriculum for those students in that particular state, not the federal government, okay? He goes on, schools should be accountable. Parents have, yep, absolutely. Why shouldn't, is there any disagreement right there? Is that wrong? Schools should be accountable? What reason would we have to believe that the schools shouldn't be accountable? I'll wait. What reason should schools not be accountable? What reason should schools not tell you what they're doing? Tell parents what they're doing? Really? Schools should be accountable. Why? There's nothing to disagree here. He goes on, parents have the right to choose the most appropriate educational opportunity for their children, including homeschool, public school, or private school. Yeah. And I think the reason for that is because it's their children. It's their children. So one could stand to reason that since these are their children, they more than likely, correct me if I'm wrong now, but they more than likely would know what kind of schooling that their children should go to, or have the right to place their kids in the schools that they want. I'm just saying. I mean, after all, I could be wrong. The socialists and the communists in our government, and the Fabian socialists and communists and Marxists in our government knows better than me. But I'm just making the assumption that since that's my child, I should have the right, to homeschool them, send them to public school or private school. I'm just saying, I don't know. Correct me in the comment box below if I'm wrong. But that's just my assessment. I don't know. I'm just trying to use logic here. I don't know. Maybe I'm not using pure logic. I don't know. Tell me. I don't know. The article goes on. Trump's expected executive order will not be his first on the topic of education. He previously signed an order to expand school choice, which directs the Department of Education to release a plan within 60 days on how states can utilize federal funds to bolster school choice programs. End of article. I highly doubt that they will probably do that because one particular source I was reading some time ago essentially said that the Department of Education does this and utilize funds to bolster private parents sending their kids to private schools and so forth. This, in so many senses of the word, would hurt public school teachers, if you will. After all, if all the children are going to private schools or being homeschooled, and they're not going to public schools where the teachers are, right, so-called teachers are, right. What's the use of them? But let's look at this, okay? What is the use of them? Well, let's look at a lot of these teachers. Not all the teachers, not in every school, not in every state, not in every community. But let's be realistic, particularly under the Biden administration and so forth. What have these teachers, generally speaking, been teaching our children? What have they really been teaching our children? Oh, transgenderism. You got a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid. You telling them you can be whatever you want to be. You can be a girl. Biologically, you're a male, but you can be a girl. You can be whatever you want to be. Confusing our children instead of teaching these children their ABCs. What are these nasty, freaky teachers doing? Exactly what I just told you. Not all of them. I don't want to hear nothing about you blaming all the teachers for doing that. Stop it. I didn't say all of them, so just calm down. But and I know, everybody knows and I know that a lot of these teachers were doing that, getting on TikTok video, making TikTok videos and Instagram videos talking about how they coming out and sharing these stories with their children, these little bitty kids, you nasty freak. I'm trying to be nice. Here we go. Y'all know I don't like these people. They're nasty. These freaky teachers doing these videos talking about how they coming out of the closet and all this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff was going on in our schools. And yet we spend, according to what Trump said, $1 trillion a year to finance these schools and think about it. What is this $1 trillion going to? Why that amount of money? I would make this assessment. Let's just say $600 billion adjusted for inflation was being spent on schools throughout the country by the federal government. $600 billion, that's still a lot. Where is this money going? If you argue, well, it's going to pay the teachers' salaries. Why are we paying a lot of these teachers' salaries, okay, for things that have nothing to do with teaching our children academics? They have nothing to do with teaching our children how to utilize their brain. So many of these schools, kindergarten through 12 and post-education schools, are too busy indoctrinating our children with socialistic mentalities and communism and trying to create revolutionaries. So our kids go to these schools and they come out angry and mad and shaking their fists at America. But if you ask them what's 1 freaking plus 1, they can't tell you that. And I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. If it's a math class, the math teacher ought to be teaching math. I'm not going to pay you $50 trillion to teach socialism and trying to create a Marxist revolution with my child. What the HELL does that have to do with teaching our children? I have no quarrels with what Trump is talking about doing. Because he knows, and every American with a brain knows, that if you really look at the overall picture, are our children really being taught like they ought to be taught? Tell me, please. Because I'm not seeing it. A lot of these kids are graduating dumb as 18 box of rocks. Now, summing this up. As the article says, if this executive order is signed, and if this is dismantled, it will merely essentially place the control of the education of the children into the hands of the states. It's not getting rid of anything. It should be in the hands of the states from the beginning. Okay? Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I mean, all of this stuff talk about Trump, he's just over. No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not. I totally disagree with that. I don't agree with everything fully because I don't have all the information on it. So I can't make an actual judgment call on it. But what I can make a judgment call on is this situation, this rumor about him signing an executive order to dismantle the Board of Education. That I can get behind because the Board of Education, as of now, stinks. And let me say this. What people might not know is that the so-called Board of Education had been infiltrated going all the way back to, I would say, the 1930s, 40s. And it had been infiltrated by secular humanists. And there was a particular man who was known as a Fabian socialist. And this man's name probably will ring a bell in the minds of a lot of people. His name was John Dewey. And according to history, John Dewey was essentially he was a socialist. And according to history, he went to Russia, communist Russia, and he stayed there for a while and observed how the communist government in Russia was teaching the students. And he took that uniformity and brought that back to America. John Dewey was one of the signers of the Humanist Manifestos 1 and 2. I'm not going to go into the detail of it here, but none of that stuff, for the most part, really benefited our children. Now, there was some things in there that I could kind of understand, in terms of all children are different and so forth, so they learn differently. I get that part. Some of that I agree with, but most of it didn't. Our educational system began to go downhill when John Dewey became the head of the Board of Education. I believe he became the head of the Board of Education, or he was a member of the Board of Education during his time when he took it over. And he signed the Humanist Manifestos 1 and 2, which is arbitrary to anything that we were really about before then, okay? This happened around in the 1930s, for crying out loud. So you can imagine where our schools, during all these decades of indoctrination, look at where we are now. I could go on and on with that. But he was a socialist, and what he wanted to do was he wanted to take away the individuality of a lot of the students. He wanted to base our educational system on the communist educational system of Russia, and he wanted us to model that. He wanted our schools to model that. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I could go on with that, but I'm not, because I'll be here for longer than I should be. But anyway, to sum this up, this is the deal. I have no problem with what Trump is talking about here. Whether or not this actually happens, I don't know. But it needs to be. If it's not going to be given back into the hands of the states, then the federal government and those who really care about the education of our students need to remove all these freaky teachers out of here. They need to say, you cannot teach this kind of stuff in the schools. You need to teach your children math. You need to teach your students science. You need to teach your students history. You need to teach them all the things that you're supposed to be teaching, that the taxpayers of this freaking country are paying you to do. That's what you should be teaching them. Stop with the freaky deaky stuff, and that's all there is to it. But we'll see what happens. We'll see. We will see. We'll see. But that's what I had to say about that. What do you guys think about this proposed idea of signing an executive order that would dismantle the Board of Education? Do you agree with it or do you disagree with it? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. God bless you all. See you again.